Kenya is revving up its transition to electric vehicles with an aim to foster a robust local EV ecosystem and lessen reliance on fossil fuels. The shift to EVs is expected to significantly cut greenhouse gas emissions and the national petroleum bill, currently standing at 628.4 billion Kenya shillings. While the transition to green mobility will mean a cleaner country, it will also have a significant impact on the country's inflation, which stood at 2.7% in October.
The thing which I think is going to change our inflation very fundamentally is the transition from fossil fuel to EV, particularly in public transportation. If you go around Nairobi now, you will see that every third motorcycle is electric. And increasingly, you're also seeing matatus are electric. Now, the cost of running an electric vehicle in Kenya is 1/3 of the cost of running a fossil fuel car. So the more you transition into EV, the more you sort of put a cap on the transport sector, pushing up prices as a result of fuel price volatility. So we think that as we do that, we are being very aggressive about it. We have a big challenge on supply of large vehicles in the global market, but we are trying to do something about that. We think we can electrify all bodabodas in 3 years and matatus probably in 5.
With electric vehicles, Kenya will also reduce its reliance on petrol or diesel, drastically reducing fuel consumption. If Kenya's market for EVs grows, national fuel demand will decrease, which could reduce Kenya's oil import dependency. Fuel prices have a major effect on inflation, which relies heavily on diesel and petrol for transport, power generation, and agriculture. In October, fuel prices dropped in the lowest level in 19 months, reflecting lower import costs. This is expected to further ease the country's inflation.
The transition to EV is also beginning to affect the demand for the amount of consumption of fuel. We are seeing that slowly. By the time we are done, I think with bodabodas, we will be saving $1 billion of petroleum imports.
The country already established e-mobility players like Basigo, EV manufacturers, Sifao Group, electric bus company, and Rome, electric buses and motorbikes. Even so, transport stakeholders have been complaining that high prices and maintenance costs are the biggest hindrance to the country's transition from fuel to electric-powered vehicles. In the forum, David Ndii noted that the government will introduce some policies in the finance bill that will address this.
There were some proposals last year, but what we've done is we have also trying to rescue some of the things that went in the backwater in this new. But in addition to that, we have finished a policy regime, mainstream EV into our motor vehicle assembly regime, including both bikes and whatever. It turns out when you go to the motor vehicle tax incentives, because they were done a long time ago, there is a whole schedule of CKD kits and what goes into CKD kits. The drive motors and the batteries for EV were not there, for the simple reason that they didn't exist. So one of the things we've done is to put them in those schedules, and that should go through in the next couple of part of this raft of reforms. That will mean you'll now be able to bring an EV CKD at zero tax, the same way as making parity with the IC vehicles. On motorbikes, there was a very peculiar regulation. These are usually done by lobbies and interest groups that restricted where you could assemble motorcycles. You have to be a registered assembler and you can only do it. So you could not do contract assembly. Currently, you can't do that for motorcycles. And we have listened to that. So we are also removing that so that the existing assembly plant for motorcycles, in general, has one or two, a couple of other people, can actually become contract assemblers for other brands. So that's one of the restrictions that are restricting scaling up. But as far as scaling up, certainly motorcycles we are scaling. We know that there are investors who are putting up assembly plants with capacities of up to 50,000 bikes a year. On buses, which is where we are really where we are focusing on EV, and somebody talked about transportation of goods. The simple reason we are doing on passenger transport is because that is the thing which is government can do as public policy. We cannot do direct intervention with the logistics of business. So what we think is, once we do the public vehicle transport, you build the scale, for example, of charging infrastructure around that. And then you provide the critical mass so that the rest of the industry can come along. So it's really a way of catalyzing. It's more catalytic because it also has the benefit of bringing down urban transport costs and that kind of thing. The big challenge with buses and trucks is supply side because of a huge demand. I tried to persuade Ashok Leila. He promised us 1,000 buses. They do buses for switch, even for the city of London. We are still talking. We are still in the queue. What we're doing is now being more proactive with Chinese manufacturers. And then, because they are slightly more expensive than ICE vehicles, particularly for transport, we are looking at financing in which we can plug in things like carbon credits and stuff like that, so that we can bring the actual capex to parity. Because operating costs, as I said, the operating cost of a diesel matatu, these mini buses, here we have got the numbers, is 51 shillings per kilometer. The operating cost of the EV ones is 14 shillings per kilometer in terms of fuel. Because the economics work, I believe that we have huge potential to actually become a manufacturing base for motorcycles, because there is a 5 million bike market in the future. And if you look at replacement demand alone, it's more than 500 million bikes a year. That's something that I think we have potential there in terms of manufacturing.
With government support, the country is set to create a thriving domestic EV industry.